Maria, אפשר? Hi, Shalom. My name is Akiva Tor from the Israel Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this press briefing with the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Tzachi Hanegbi. Mr. Hanegbi has been in public service since he was a student. He began as a student leader in Hebrew University at the age of 27. He was advisor to Prime Minister Yitzhak Shamir. He served as Minister of Health, Minister of Justice, Minister of the Environment, Minister of Transportation, Minister of Public Security, and as the Minister responsible for Israel's security services. Tzachi Hanegbi is today Israel's Deputy Foreign Minister. Deputy Foreign Minister, thank you very much.
Thank you, Akiva. Hello, everybody. I cannot see you, but I hope you can see me. And we are going to spend some time together. I want to thank you for joining me today, the 22nd day of a protective edge operation, who began as an operation, but at the moment we in Israel define it as a war, because we feel that we are under ongoing attack by the Hamas and Islamic Jihad, two terrorist organizations that commit war crimes every day, not only in the last 22 days, for decades, but in the last 22 days, this is what we see. We are being bombarded by altogether almost 3,000 rockets that were launched at us indiscriminately against our civilian population, from the south to the north, from Beersheba in the south to Haifa in the north, and in between. 3.5 million Israelis are the target of this indiscriminate attack. From the sea, commander units of the Hamas were trying to penetrate our borders and massacre Israeli civilians, and underneath the ground, from terror tunnels that were dug for years, are using the cover of the ground in order to come up and hurt Israelis, soldiers and civilians alike. We were dragged into this war against our will. We tried to prevent it. We were under attack for 48 hours, and the Prime Minister, Mr. Netanyahu, demonstrated unprecedented restraint, calling upon the Hamas not to go forward with these attacks. And he says that quiet will be answered by quiet. But we didn't hear any readiness, see any readiness to go back to the calm times. On the contrary, we were shot at again and again. The Prime Minister gave them 24 hours more in order to make sure that once we go forward to try and put an end to this aggression, we are convinced that we exhausted all other opportunities. You know the result. The result was that the fire against us didn't reduce. On the contrary, it was enhanced. And Israel began Operation Protective Edge. We have to look at the perspective, the historical perspective. It's not just a fight between neighbors about some rights or issues of misunderstanding. Israel, 2005, 10 years ago, unilaterally withdrew from Gaza, calling upon the Gaza people to take their lives in their hand. They were hoping for so many years for freedom and independence. We took our settlers out. We uprooted 10,000 Jewish people that were living there. Many of them were born there. And we made a decision that even though it was very much disputed in Israel and caused a lot of tension in Israel, the prime minister at the time, Ariel Sharon, made this decision to get out of Gaza, to take our dead people from the cemeteries, to dismantle the holy synagogues that we had there in every settlement, just in order not to leave anything behind, and to allow the Palestinians for the first time since history in Gaza to have their own life without any Israeli occupation, any Israeli interference. Unfortunately, the Palestinian Authority that was supposed to take over and to bring Gaza into the normal states and to take care of the citizens and their economy and prosperity and life and education, they were kicked out by the Hamas several months later. The Hamas took over and made this area into kingdom of terrorism, sponsored and financed and immuned by the Iranian regime. So in the last several years, twice we had to retaliate to such attacks against us in 2008 and 2012, and we hope that they have learned the lesson and they understand that Israel will never be paralyzed against such aggression, and Israel will have, as much as we cherish life and we hate to be dragged into violent confrontation, we have no choice but to defend our people. So the government made a decision that the goal of this operation is very limited, is not very ambitious, it's not presumptuous, it's very, very, I would say, banalic. To restore security and calm to the people of Israel for as long as we can, and to harm the infrastructure of the Hamas as much as we can. This is the goal. It didn't change. During the operation, several times we accepted initiatives by several sides to exercise a ceasefire. It was an idea brokered by Egypt for a ceasefire that we accepted. The other side, unfortunately, violated. There was a humanitarian ceasefire for 5 hours that was initiated by the United Nations that Israel accepted. In these 5 hours, they launched 47 rockets at us. And again, several days ago in the weekend, we accepted the idea of a ceasefire, humanitarian ceasefire. We see no response from the other side. We have a problem. When we show restraint, the other side, again and again, through history, through the last 66 years of Israel's independence, translate any kind of moderation, any kind of restraint, any kind of sanity as a sign of weakness, as a symptom that Israel is not really determined to defend itself. In the West, when you have a more rational thinking, a compromise is part of your culture and part of your life. Unfortunately, with fundamentalist, zealot organization, such demonstrations of normality, of realism, of pragmatism, of moderation is being translated as a sign of weakness. And when you see that your enemy is weak, you go forward in trying to harm him much more. This is the only explanation that we can give to this phenomena, that once and again, several times, even though they have no achievements and they will have no achievements, and Israel is strong and united, and the public of Israel gives, according to every poll, overwhelming support to the government. There is no opposition to this war. The right wing, the left wing, the center, all of the political arena is totally behind the prime minister. And if there is criticism of the prime minister, it comes from those who believe that ceasefire should not be accepted, from those who believe that the goals of the war must be much more ambitious, and we have to go forward all the way to put an end to the existence of the Hamas. So even though there are, as you know, such criticism, the government is committed to bring back the peace, and if we can achieve it in a political way, it's of course the most preferred way, the better way. If we cannot, if the other side goes on shooting at us, trying to kill us, we will have no choice but to answer militarily and to reach our goals in a military way. We are aware of the horrible situation in Gaza, the fact that the lives of so many people are devastated, that millions, 1.8 millions, are going through unacceptable conditions with electricity and the supply of food, and the problems of having to leave their homes because we see the phenomena that's happening, as you all know, that the Hamas is hiding behind their backs, is using them as human shield, doesn't care if they're being hurt. On the contrary, we have too many indications that they are hopeful about civilians being killed and injured, because they feel that this is something that will allow them to push Israel to the side, to the corner in the universal arena, in the international community. But we're doing our best to try and target as much as we can only the terrorists, their military camps, their military compounds, their launchers, and many times, unfortunately, when you use such tactics of hiding behind the backs of civilians, civilians are being hit. And this is why we, many times, including today, including now, we agree to humanitarian ceasefire, even though it's unilateral, even though the other side does not respect it. We feel committed to allow several hours of tranquility to take care of the humanitarian needs. This was a short introduction to the situation, and I would be very happy to elaborate and relate to issues that you would raise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we've received the questions. This is a briefing to the Jewish Media Summit, which took place here in Jerusalem about 5 weeks ago. But it's open to the entire world. And the first question actually comes from Egypt, from Muhammad Lutfi. How often is Israel communicating with Egypt? Is it on a daily basis? Will Israel only accept a ceasefire agreement that directly involves Egypt as part of the solution?
Egypt plays a very positive role for years, but also specifically in this confrontation. And we believe that the suggestion that they have made 10 days ago was the one that was supposed to be accepted by all sides. Unfortunately, the world and Israel accepted it, the Hamas rejected it. I have no idea why they didn't give an explanation that makes sense. But we are committed to our acceptance of the Egyptian broker attempts. We feel that that's the most rational thing, because they have a border with Gaza, and they're very passionate about the Palestinian people. They don't like the terrorism and violence that being exercised by the Hamas, but they understand the need to change the life of the people of Gaza. And in this sense, we share the same vision of seeing Gaza living normal life with the rest of humanity. And also, they are in peace treaty with Israel for so many decades, so we can trust them, the Palestinians can trust them, and they are able, using the Rafah crossing, to change the lives of the Palestinians once they will be certain, like when we will be certain, that anything that goes through this crossing does not serve for more militant purposes and does not serve for the building of more and more rockets, terror tunnels, and other means of death.
Thank you. The second question is from Kika Cohen, Jewish Voice of Argentina. In the context of the Israeli government's decision to seek partners in new avenues, can you comment on Brazil, Chile, and Ecuador's decision to recall their ambassadors? Is it a serious crisis?
Of course, it's something that we find very, we regret for the decision of the countries that have been mentioned. I think that we have very good relationship with those governments for so many years, and we expected them to understand that being balanced and being more or less biased would help them to have a more positive role. Unfortunately, they made this decision to call their ambassadors for consultations. I believe that such a thing will allow the ambassadors that live here and that ran to the shelter when they heard siren and that were witness of Israel's efforts to prevent this crisis from being created in the first place. Maybe it will be a good way for the presidents or the prime ministers to sit with the ambassadors and understand Israel's justified decision to retaliate to ongoing provocation. But I believe that in due time the ambassadors will come back and the relationship on the long range is not going to be harmed.
Thank you. Michael Feldman, Kiev Ivreski in Ukraine. According to Haaretz this morning, the Foreign Ministry advised the Prime Minister to ask the UN Security Council to draft a resolution for a ceasefire. Can you comment on this?
Oh, I haven't read Haaretz, unfortunately, this morning, but there are efforts to convene the Security Council for a long time. There were already a meeting of the Security Council in calling for a ceasefire, and we have to make clear in the Security Council through our friends there, because we are not a member, and in every organization and every international forum, not only we are embracing an idea of ceasefire that will lead to negotiation, that will lead to some kind of mutual understanding, we believe that this is the right timing. After 3 rounds of violence that led to nothing, that didn't change the lives of the Palestinians, on the contrary, caused more tragedy and more bloodshed, also in Israel. It's time for Gaza to disassociate itself from the idea of violence. It's time for the disarmament of the terrorist organization that gave no hope to the Palestinian people. It's time for the demilitarization of Gaza. And this idea becomes much more recognized and understood in the language of the international community. We heard this idea from the decision of the 28 foreign ministers of the EU. We heard it in the conversation between President Barack Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu. And we see that more and more people, Egypt, Palestinian Authority, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Arab countries understand that this cannot go on. The fact that Palestinians were abducted by the Hamas, became a hostage to the radical intentions and commitments of this terrorist organization, is simply unacceptable anymore.
Thank you. Maria, can we take some questions from the audience that is here? And if you can just please introduce yourself.
Good afternoon. Raphael Aaron from the Times of Israel. Are you sure? Doesn't work?
It seems to be working.
Hello?
Okay, we'll take another question from the virtual world. Okay.
Hello? Yeah, Raphael Aaron from the Times of Israel. I'm sure you're aware of UNRWA, the UN agency in charge of Palestinian refugees. 3 times rockets have been found in their schools. This morning, one of the schools in Gaza was shelled, and UNRWA came out with a very harsh statement condemning Israel, first of all, blaming Israel, condemning Israel for the incident, and basically calling on the international community to hold Israel accountable for this. My question to you, Mr. Deputy Foreign Minister, is UNRWA a force for the good, or perhaps the opposite?
Well, UNRWA is doing a great job helping the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria and in the Gaza Strip for many decades, and especially under such horrible conditions. They are a blessed refuge for people that are leaving the combat areas in order to save themselves. One thing UNRWA failed to do, and that's prevent terror organizations from using its facilities as a terror headquarters, as terror hide for rockets. And we have so many evidence, solid evidence, that Hamas is using UNRWA schools and UNRWA facilities for terrorist use. You mentioned yourself 3 times already, and who knows how many were not found, but 3 times already in the last 10 days, the UNRWA people found rockets hidden in their basements, in their facilities, and this is something that is totally unacceptable. The United Nations General Secretary Ban Ki-moon harshly condemned this phenomena. But what happened in the last 3 times, the rockets were taken out of UNRWA and were given back to the terrorists. Many of them probably were already shot, endangering and jeopardizing Israeli lives. So UNRWA should, instead of blaming Israel and condemning Israel, should make a real effort to stop being manipulated and used by the terrorist organizations.
Thank you.
Hello, Laura. I'm from French television Canal+.
Enchanté.
Enchanté. Vous parlez français?
Pas bien. J'ai appris à l'école pour j'oubliais presque tout le français que j'ai appris.
I'm going to do it in English. When do you see a ceasefire?
Well, all the time we hear from the Hamas that they will not accept the idea of ceasefire unless their conditions are met. And what are their conditions? To relieve the siege on Gaza. When you translate this expression to realistic terms, it means until they will be given a free traffic of rockets, of missiles, of dynamite, of cement for the tunnels, and until Israel will stop preventing them from becoming more powerful, more deadly, and more lethal. This, of course, will never happen. So if this is the condition, we will never have a ceasefire. But I believe that they will get down from this ladder very soon, because I see that they understand more and more how isolated they are, also in the Arab world, and that they really do not achieve any of their goals. And Israel is united. The people of Israel are living their lives. You see that even though we do run to the shelter, and even though we don't like the idea of taking care of our children all the time and there's sirens or whatever, and we, of course, mourn our casualties, that is, of course, dear to every Israeli, we are not going to do anything that will not give us the confidence that we achieved the goal of restoring peace and security to every Israeli. And this is a goal that is sacred to us. So if they will understand it and respect it, we can have a ceasefire in a day or in a minute. If they will be consistent in their lack of readiness to recognize this reality, the operation will go on.
I have a question here from Henry Benjamin, Australia J-Wire. How well prepared was Israel as far as knowing the location of the tunnels? Were there more tunnels discovered than were first thought?
Of course, we knew about this phenomena of terror tunnels. It was not a secret. The Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit, that was abducted in June 2006, was abducted through to a penetration of a Hamas guerrilla fighter that went underneath the ground and hijacked him and went back to Gaza. And since then, we had more and more intelligence, and we attacked many of the tunnels through the air and sometimes even with the ground operations. But even though we had a lot of intelligence, we decided to respect the ceasefire that was taking place since November 2012, after the Pillar of Defense operation. So we hope that this ceasefire will go forward and that we won't have the need to challenge the tunnels. Once we were attacked, we took advantage of this fact in order to try and put an end to this deadly phenomena. We are doing a very, very intensive and I would say resolve operation on this specific issue. This is really the main focus of the ground operation: locating the tunnels, mapping the tunnels, because it's not enough that you know where it is. You have to map it in order to make sure that you can destroy it, and later on destroy it. We, out of like 36 tunnels that were tracked already, finished destroying more than 22. And it's going on every day and through the night, because we want to do it as fast as we can in order to lower the danger for our soldiers that are making sure that this job is done. I'm not sure we had the idea of the motivation to use the tunnels the way that we use, because sometimes we think in insane and normal concepts. Like if you would ask yourself before September 11, what is the motivation of Al-Qaeda to take 11 suicide fighters and go into the Trade Center or the Pentagon or somewhere in Pennsylvania? What is going to benefit them? What will happen? America will collapse. America will say, okay, we accept the idea of Al-Qaeda, let's all get Muslim. Sometimes you don't understand that they don't need rational justification. They think that by killing, massacring, butchering your enemy, they're going to achieve any of their goals. So maybe we didn't grasp the way we should have, that these are tunnels that will be used for these exactly the same atrocities that now they're trying to do.
Okay.
I'm Brian Schroger with the Jerusalem Post and IRN USA Radio News. In your opening remarks, Mr. Deputy Foreign Minister, I heard you saying that Israel's goal has been to bring about peace, and that remains its goal. And yet, in the last few days, we've heard that Israel's goal and the necessary prerequisite for a ceasefire and long-term peace is demilitarization of Gaza. Is demilitarization, in fact, a necessary thing in order for a ceasefire and for long-term peace?
No, ceasefire is the end of violence and the end of hostility, and this is something that we believe is needed, because you don't negotiate under fire. The Hamas wants us to negotiate while they're attacking us. This is something that is unacceptable to us, and we are not. Nobody in the world feels that that's the way it should be done. But once there is a ceasefire, we will go into trying to design and shape the nature of the new Gaza, the way we think should be shaped. And the main achievement and the main goal, I think that this goal is, of course, important to the Israeli people, but I think it's so much important to the people of Gaza, because they are the people who suffer from the militarization, from the arms that are being used amongst them. So this is an idea that we believe should be the core of the shaping of Gaza after the war. Of course, I don't see, a terrorist organization do not voluntarily embrace such an idea, because for them, the raison d'etre to our friend here, and the people, their commitment to the ideas of the leaders is to be powerful enough to fight against Israel. If they lose this strategic weapon, they won't be able to exercise the mukawama, their fight, the struggle, the military fight against us.
But Mr. Sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
What will happen if they refuse the demilitarization of Gaza? They do not want that.
If they will refuse, so the rehabilitation of Gaza will be very limited, because again, they won't be able to have a port, an airport, unlimited transfer of everything that should be go into Gaza through the crossings. We're going to have the same thing that we had in the last 10 years since we left Gaza. We left Gaza in order to allow Gaza to live. They took over Gaza and they commit and force Gaza to die. We want again to allow Gaza to live. It can only live if terrorist organizations do not use this area to launch attacks at us. So if there will be negotiation that will not reach such a positive development, it's going to be very difficult to change dramatically the life of the Gazan people. So we're going to have another round of violence. It's going to take maybe several years, because I don't think they'll be very happy to initiate it easily after seeing what happened to them and the fact that they really achieved nothing. But it can happen, because it's up to them to decide when and where to attack us. So the idea of demilitarization is not only about the security of Israel. It's about the vision of normal Gaza.
Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes. Was there a question over there?
Yeah. Thank you. Asa Fitch at the Wall Street Journal. You just described the priority of destroying the tunnels, which is a huge thing that needs to be done from the Israeli side. And naturally, that's going to take some time to accomplish. Are you prepared to enter any ceasefire that includes the condition that you stop destroying the tunnels before you've been able to hit all of the ones you know about?
Of course, that's not going to happen. The Israeli government will not survive 1 second if they'll accept the idea that we know about tunnels. We physically saw them. They're there. But we withdraw from the area and we go back and tell the people who live in the Israeli-Gaza border, you live in a casino. Your life is at risk. Maybe they would come and kill you. Maybe they won't. But we, as a government, we had to leave because some decision was made in the Security Council, and okay, so maybe you defend yourselves. Maybe you leave the area and go live in the north. That's not a scenario that is feasible. So we will, of course, stay in the area till we destroy the last tunnel that we know about. As I said, it's not many days, and we will, of course, do whatever need to be done, but we have the understanding and recognition of every country that we speak with. We haven't heard such a demand from us. So it's more a fictitious possibility. Even the Hamas understands that it's not a relevant demand.
Can you, just to follow up?
Sure.
Quickly, can you say definitively how long it will take to destroy the remainder of these tunnels? I believe the government or the military believes there are around 50 of them in total. Is that correct? And how long will it take?
We don't, stand with the stopper, he said in English also, with this clock that limits you. We feel that it's not a long process, but It gets longer once we have to do also this work under attack, and this is what practically happens every day. Most of the time is being dedicated to defending the forces that are doing it. Without it, I think we would finish it a long time ago. And also we track more as time passes. We have 179 terrorists that we arrested. Many of them are part of the tunnel industry, and they allow us to have more intelligence and more knowledge about the whereabouts of tunnels. So we just found 3 new tunnels in the last 24 hours. Maybe we'll find more in the near future. But this is a focused operation, and once it's over, we'll be very satisfied that we have preserved the life of thousands of people living in this border.
Okay, so we only have 2 minutes left, and I want to be fair to our online audience as well. So with your permission, Deputy Minister, I'm going to ask 2 questions, and you can combine. Robert Magid, Australia Jewish News. Some images of large-scale urban devastation in Gaza appear to be the result of secondary explosions when underground arsenals have been hit. Is this indeed the case? That's question number 1. And Joe Leiden.
I'll just relate to. I'm not aware of many such events, but I know of some. And it is true that once you attack a specific house, it has in its basement a lot of ammunition, and then you see much bigger explosion that were expected, and it does cause some collateral damage that was not predicted in the first place. But I haven't heard of many such occasions.
And our last question by Joe Leiden of Israel News Agency. You've spoken about the humanitarian situation in Gaza. How far is Israel and the IDF willing to go in terms of acceptable risk to soldiers and to Israeli civilians in order to enable humanitarian aid to enter Gaza?
You know, I don't know if you've seen, or people abroad saw some movies that we allowed to be shown on Israeli TV and on YouTube, that pilots that had specific missions concerning terrorist headquarters and terrorist ammunition places did not fulfill their mission because there were kids around, there were civilians around, and you hear the communication between them and the headquarters, that they explaining why they are not going to go forward with the command to do A and B. And once you don't do it, so you do endanger, of course, soldiers, and it brings a lot of criticism in Israel. And there is criticism, what's happening here? What are we going with, advocate or a lawyer that is going with every platoon or with every pilot? But the answer is yes. We are committed to the international law. We know that sometimes we have to balance between our lives and their lives, and we're trying to have a normal balance, but sometimes we just make sure that we give up missions and maybe compromise. Hopefully we don't, but we know that there is a risk of compromising lives of our soldiers because we don't want to do something that you will know in advance that you will hurt civilians. And knowledge that for us is something we cannot live with, unlike the other side that's his aim, to hate civilians and to cause as much damage to civilians as possible.
Thank you very much, Deputy Foreign Minister Tzachi Hanegbi.
Thank you. Thank you.
תודה רבה.